Hello there guys, my name is MrYorkiesWorld, welcome back to the channel, and in today's video I'm going to be doing a review of P3D version 5. I've had a short enough while to test everything out and see how it's running. I first heard about P3D 5 or version 5 coming out towards the end of April 2020, and until then I'd essentially been absent for quite a few months, sorting out a few things in my own life. Family and loved ones obviously had to take priority, as did my job working for the NHS in such an uncertain time with the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. So nevertheless, I decided to give P3D version 5 a review, and I'm extremely grateful to my friend over at flightsim.com, Dom Smith, for contributing towards the cost of P3D version 5. I'm extremely grateful for his support on making my return to YouTube. It's been a hell of a lot of fun creating the last few videos on the channel to do with not only P3D, but obviously to do with FS 2020 as well. So I can't wait to get into this very, very quick, straight to the point review. As many of you will know, I like to sort of keep things short, to the point, easy to understand when it comes to reviews. I don't believe in going too far into depth. It's always fun to find certain things out for yourself as well. So just like I've done with this particular version of the simulator, I'm hoping to give whoever hasn't purchased the simulator yet, or is deciding whether to or whether not to, I'm hoping this video will help you make that decision based on my views. So nevertheless, let's get straight into the review. So let's start with the installation process there. So initially, the interface for P3D version 5 is very similar to that of previous versions of the simulator, albeit with a new logo and a new splash screen and things like that, which in my opinion is a huge improvement on the old sort of tired looking visuals of the previous version of P3D. I really think everything looks pretty good. It suits the simulator, in fact. It really does look nice. Now, within 24 hours of me initially downloading and installing P3D version 5 after it first came out, Hotfix 1 came out, and so obviously I've had to go ahead and download everything again and update it manually, which was a bit of a pain, but I can certainly say it was worth it to be able to check out this new version of P3D, which again, in my opinion, is very, very exciting to review indeed. The installation was pretty much self-explanatory. I'm not going to go into it in too much detail. Everybody knows how to install something. It was quick and easy on my particular system. I didn't notice, apart from the visuals, much difference. The questions were the same. Obviously, you've got to choose where you install it and things like that. The whole time taken, or the whole process of actually installing it, didn't really take any more or less time than the previous version of P3D, so P3D version 4 or 4.5. It didn't really take any more or any less time with P3D version 5, in my opinion. So obviously if we move on to the interface of the actual program then, so with this version being a new version of P3D, I expected to see sort of a new and improved user interface within the simulator, and I haven't actually been disappointed. The colour scheme, I have to say, suits the simulator a lot better. It helps to make it look a lot more sort of simple, or a hell of a lot simpler than it was before. The startup window itself looks to be a little smaller than it was before, and it might be confusing at first if you're looking at this compared to a previous version of P3D that you're used to. However, you should pretty quickly manage to get sort of used to the new layout. It only took me a few minutes before I was literally right at home and able to sort of navigate around without a problem again. So that's not something that is a major concern to me in terms of getting used to it. It's basically P3D. It's still P3D. It just looks a little bit different. One thing that I did notice was the weather section, which is usually in the options menu within the sim sliders, now sits inside the world section, as opposed to having its own sort of weather section, or tab if you want to call it that. I found that to be a little bit confusing. I was looking all over the place thinking, well, how do I get this new weather? How do I get the new atmospherics and things like that? And eventually I found it in the world section. Bear in mind, I was literally doing this completely out. I wasn't doing this with any guide or anything. I didn't have any knowledge whatsoever that this was how the new simulator was going to be laid out. I literally just installed it, opened it up, and this is what I saw. So I later realised it made sense, really, for everything to be related to the world, the atmosphere and the weather to come under the same sort of umbrella. So for it to be in the world section, in my opinion, I then got thinking to myself, well, why wasn't it there all the time? It really does make sense because it's all part of the world, it's all part of the atmosphere and the weather and things like that. So yeah, it sort of belongs there in a way. Now obviously the settings screens themselves seem to have got a new few features, such as the option to enable the variable refresh rate, dynamic texture streaming, enhanced atmospherics, which is a beta. I did eventually decide to enable the advanced or enhanced atmospherics, and I was quite impressed how much of a difference it made to the clouds, the atmosphere, and sort of the haze effect and things like that. It does take away the ability to manually customize some of the cloud options, but it seems to work really well. I mean, at the time of making this video, Active Sky, sort of public beta sort of thing, Active Sky P3D I think it is, which is actually compatible with P3D version 5, that can sort of take control of the weather as well, and it really does work very well with the enhanced atmospherics, even though that's in a beta stage at the moment, which is, again, when I was actually testing this, Active Sky wasn't available, but now I'm making this video, since then, it is now available, and I would highly recommend that you go over, if you've got an Active Sky subscription already, Active Sky for P3D version 4, you can actually upgrade for free to the new Active Sky, which is available for P3D 4 and P3D 5. So I'd highly recommend checking that out on the Hi-Fi website. But apart from that, you've got the choice. You can either enable the enhanced atmospherics, which will give you those really nice sort of clouds and things, or you can just go back to what it usually is and disable that. Obviously, the enhanced atmospherics do come with a bit of a resource hog. It does cause a lot of resources to be used, but nevertheless, I think it's worth it. It definitely is worth it. So if we move on to the visuals, which is, again, as I just touched on a moment ago, these are my favourite part of this new simulator. On my first try with P3D version 5, I decided to go bare bones in terms of scenery or add-ons or anything like that. I wanted to see what the simulator looks like straight out of the box. So the only add-on aircraft that I've basically installed was my newly purchased A2A Simulations Cessna 172, so that I could have a look around and sort of see what things look like up close in terms of the visuals, and this aircraft I thought was perfect for doing that. I started off looking at some stock airports around the world, such as Dubrovnik, Heathrow, Stockholm, airports like that, really, to see what things look like straight out of the box. And I've got to say, again, I was extremely impressed with how great things look and how different things look. It reminds me a little bit of X-Plane, to be fair. It looks similar, but not the same. I think people might be able to understand where I'm coming from with that, with just the visuals and how sort of the atmospherics look a little bit similar. But nevertheless, yeah, definitely an improvement, in my opinion, on previous versions of the simulator, with all those effects. Very, very realistic, very eye-catching, and very customizable as well. Now, the actual scenery and the scenery items don't really look massively different, but somehow it does seem as though some obvious changes have taken place. When I look at the ground textures and things like that, it's starting to look a little bit more HD than what it did before. It looks a little bit more like Orbex, to be fair. Definitely better in terms of resolution. It's sharper than usual, even with the FXAA turned on. And I did notice things felt a lot more fluid and sort of easy to work with. There wasn't very much stutter, there wasn't very much lag. We'll get onto performance in just a little bit, but obviously I'm fully aware that this can be expected, considering the fact that we've not got any add-on aircraft, well, apart from the one I'm using, which is not very complex, not got any sort of weather engine going, or anything else at the time of sort of making this review. Now is a different story, but still I've got sort of a few airports installed, I've got this aircraft installed, and I've got Active Sky, and even with that, what I will say is there is very little stutter, very little lag. In fact, I have managed to have plenty of simulation sessions as of late where there has been absolutely none. It has just been as smooth as butter. It really has. It's been absolutely fantastic. Now, I would actually say that you might be able to get away with turning those sliders a little bit towards the right in version 5. I did make a very initial sort of version 1 of my settings for P3D 5 video, and that was a little bit premature, because what I should have done was wait until Active Sky came out and things like that. But nevertheless, I made a video which is basically the same as what the settings are that I use in version 4.5, and they worked well in P3D version 5. I probably will make another video, just sort of like an update to that initial settings video, because you can sort of increase those settings now. I think the video that I did make is still helpful because it will be useful for people who have got sort of low to mid-range PCs. But now that I'm using the i9 9900K along with the 1080 Ti and 32 gigabytes of RAM. So I might make a video on turning those sort of settings up a little bit, because I think you could really get away with it in version 5. The performance is so much better, and obviously the visuals would go hand in hand with that. They would it'd make it look even nicer if you could put those sort of sliders towards the right a little bit more as well. So as we get further into the visuals, then the weather has changed quite a bit too. That's the obvious thing that we all saw in the trailer from Lockheed Martin. The clouds look a lot nicer in version 5, and that's without the need to install any sort of third-party cloud add-ons. Bear in mind, when I was writing what I'm reading right now, when I was writing this review, obviously I didn't have Active Sky. Now we've got Active Sky, it just reminds me even more why we don't really need to be fussing about any add-ons and things like that for clouds. Obviously people will still want to use them because it hasn't got the most accurate clouds in the world, but as a base, as a sort of like a stock set of clouds, it really has gone above and beyond what I think everybody expected that P3D could get to. And I don't know whether that's because of the imminent release of FS 2020 or whenever it does get released. It might not be, anytime soon, but I don't know whether that's in anticipation for that. I don't know whether it's Lockheed Martin's way of sort of trying to say, well, actually, we've got something impressive too that we can do with the clouds, and we've got this, that, and the other. Obviously, it's nothing compared to what FS 2020 is going to be, probably, but there we go. In terms of the simulator now having more realistic time zones, that is another thing that I'm very impressed with. And I'm putting this under sort of visuals because it's to do with the atmosphere and stuff like that. The time zones basically dictate, how accurate it's going to be, what amount of daylight you're going to have at a certain time and things like that, and how the sort of time zones work and transition between each other in the simulator is a majorly important thing, especially for me when I'm doing a sort of like if I'm flying from the US to the UK or from the UK to the US, places like that where there's obviously a time difference, that can be quite important for people. So it's good to know that they've got the time zones correct, and obviously in turn with that adds a little bit more realism. It means it's going to be light when it's meant to be light, it's going to be evening when it's meant to be evening, it's going to be, everything's going to look and feel a hell of a lot more realistic, and it's going to be better than it was in previous versions of the simulator. I will try and put up some sort of visuals in terms of the screenshots that I managed to get from the evening time and the morning time in the simulator. Again, I'm in the Cessna 172 in these images, but it is a really, really lovely set of textures and effects that we get in P3D version 5, in my opinion, and it just looks absolutely beautiful. My catchphrase on the channel is "look at that," and to be fair, I was sat there writing this review and obviously going in and into the simulator and testing things out, and I was just saying to myself, look at that, just look at that, look how beautiful that is, and it truly is. I would highly recommend that you get into the time and season selector and just go through and change sort of the time and things like that and the seasons, just to see truly how nice this simulator looks now compared to what it did in previous versions. So finally, we move on to performance, and I've obviously covered this a little bit in the previous sections of this review, but I'm happy to say I was extremely impressed with how well the simulator performed on my system. Straight out of the box, literally, as I said earlier. It felt very smooth, very fluid, without the need to really change anything at all. I've not touched the config file at all. I've not used any external tools such as Nvidia Inspector. To be perfectly honest, I don't sort of use those tools anyway, but nevertheless. The only time I did notice some lag and some stuttering, actually, was when I enabled the God rays, and at the same time I was trying to use OBS to record. I've got the 1080 Ti, I've got 32 gig of RAM, I've got the i9 9900K. So what I suspected that is because I'm recording at the same time as sort of taking everything in, that's my GTX 1080 Ti telling me to tone things down a little bit, and I could hear the fans spooling up as well, so it was obviously quite sort of intense having those God rays and everything else turned right to the max. It's important to note that at the time of this review, the advanced options such as God rays, everything like that is in beta at the moment, so there's a good chance that improvements will probably be made in the future, and performance issues that are brought on by this option at the moment will probably sort of disappear as updates get released and as things like that. If you do have a newer GPU, such as a 2080 or a 2080 Ti or something higher than a 1080 Ti, I would assume that it would be a little bit better in terms of stuttering and lag with those God rays. But I'll leave that to you guys in the comments to tell me whether that's the case or not. What sort of setups have you got? Do the God rays cause stuttering on your system? Let me know in the comments. Now, I'll touch upon my settings again because it comes under performance. Obviously, they depend on what type of flight I'm doing, what time of day I'm going to be sort of departing and arriving, and things like that. So certain situations might be a little bit more demanding than others. And you might find, even with a similar setup to mine, that something that works good for me might not work good for you. But it all depends on getting those settings right and getting this scenario right and everything. And that's why a lot of people will see that in my profiles list on the settings page, I've also got quite a few different ones. I've not just got the regular settings preset, I've got different settings for different scenarios. So I would highly recommend that you do that, even in version 5, just to make sure that you can always get the best performance out of the simulator. So I thought it would be helpful to sort of include an issues/bugs section in this review. It's important to bear in mind when considering the review itself that I've got a fresh installation of P3D version 5 and I've also got Hotfix 1 installed. A lot of people have slated this hotfix and they've said that it brings about more issues than good. However, I somewhat disagree with that statement, and the reason for that being, having initially installed the base of version 5, downloaded and installed it, and tested it for a while before the hotfix was released, I've got to say that there have been some improvements on the base version compared to the hotfix version. For example, on my system, I was suffering from a lot of crashes to desktop as soon as I entered the simulator. Problems with certain aircraft, issues that caused the sim to freeze or crash when I was changing the time of day, stuff like that. None of which have actually happened since I've updated to the Hotfix 1. So it's got something to do with that, I'm sure it has. Obviously, it's going to fix certain things for certain people, and it might make certain things worse for others, but I don't think basically that's something we can do anything about. I was going to completely uninstall the entire simulator, format the SSD that it's on, and do a fresh install with Hotfix 1, but I found that upgrading each component individually was actually okay, and it worked great. I've not had any issues. Again, it solved a lot of those problems that I've been having, and the majority of crashes that I've experienced since installing Hotfix 1 have been caused when I've been using third-party aircraft or scenery. So in terms of sort of blaming P3D, I can't really get away with that. A lot of people are publishing tutorials and sort of guides on how to force P3D version 5 to work with certain add-ons like PMDG aircraft and, sort of Ultimate Traffic Live and Pro ATCX, many of the add-ons that we all use, Aerosoft and stuff like that. But for the majority of people, what I would say is simply wait until those add-ons have been made officially compatible with P3D version 5. Most add-ons that are being updated to support the P3D version 5 will work a lot better once they actually get released, because they won't be trying to sort of run in compatibility mode, if you will, if you want to talk in sort of technical terms. It's as if you're trying to run a program that was made for Windows 95 in Windows 10. Sometimes it'll work, sometimes it won't, and most of the time you'll have compatibility issues. So they will be natively supported and they will run better once they've actually been updated. On the other hand, some developers have said that their products will work fine in P3D version 5 natively, but the majority will probably be releasing updates. So my advice again is to wait. Maybe go back to your installation of P3D version 4.5 or earlier than that until version 5 is fully sort of supported, like some people have done already. Some people have downgraded. Some people have got backup software. I know I've got backup software that backs up the entire PC, backs up individual drives, so I can easily go back to a previous version of anything that I want to go back to. If you've got something like that, I would recommend it because it's very, very helpful, specifically when you're sat there waiting for something to be compatible for version 5, when it might be a while until it's compatible with version 5. So, overall / final verdict then. So as with all my reviews, I like to keep things quick, I like to keep things easy. I would say P3D version 5 is definitely worth the purchase, simply because it's quite obvious a lot of work has been done to make it a lot better than previous versions of the simulator. It performs better, it looks better, it feels better, and it works pretty well without much tinkering at all. At least for me, in my case. It might be a completely different circumstance for you. No doubt there could be some more updates of version 5 coming soon. I've no idea, especially with the atmospherics currently being in beta. I would assume that Lockheed Martin will at some point be doing another update. I'm assuming that feature will no longer be in a beta at some point in its life. If you're looking for a great simulator to stick with, or if you're looking for something to sort of tide you over until Flight Simulator 2020 comes out, I would say it is definitely worth the purchase, definitely worth the wait for the add-ons to become sort of compatible natively. Some people might have issues, especially if you've not really got the most powerful GPU and you're expecting to use the advanced atmospherics, but overall you should be able to run the sim pretty well and get a good experience out of it, in my sort of opinion, on sort of mid to high-end computers. So basically that is it from me, guys. This sort of short review is something that I love to do because it gets straight to the point. I definitely recommend picking up P3D version 5 if you can. Thank you very much for watching, guys. If you like this video, please leave me a like. If you've got any questions, put them in the comments section. And if you're not subscribed already, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.